Do you ever wonder if you can really trust God? The God of the Bible, when things feel or are, not just feel, dark and discouraging. How do you synthesize with honesty, which is really, we might as well be honest because God knows all things? That Jesus loves me, this I know, for the Bible tells me so, and that the Lord is my shepherd when your prayers are not answered, not only for yourself, but sometimes I think it's harder when your prayers are not answered for those you love so very much. Today, we welcome for the second time author and disability advocate Jillian Benfield, and we get to talk about her latest book, Overwhelmed and Grateful, the key to finding God's goodness in all of life's ups and downs. Welcome back, Jillian.
Thank you so much for having me again.
Oh, my pleasure. Your book is so beautiful. Here, I'll show it
Thank
to you.
you.
I mean, it's pretty. It's not just
I They did a
beautiful.
great job.
They
They
did
really
a
did.
they did a great job. And the ampersand, I don't know how to say that word, but I just love that whole thing, and it's throughout the book. And we'll be talking about it. Um, please tell us where you're from and a little bit about your family.
Sure. I am from the Space Coast of Florida, so that's Central East Coast, an hour east of Orlando. We live 8 minutes from the beach, which is lovely. I am married to Andy. He is a prior military guy, now a full-time private practice orthodontist. And we have three lovely kids. Our oldest is Violet. She's 12. Our middle son is Anderson. He is 10 and he has Down syndrome. And my youngest son is 8. His name is Preston. And although you would never know it today looking at him, he was born with some severe medical complexities. And those stories make their way into this book.
Yes, they do. And you had Preston the last time we talked.
Yes.
I think so.
Mhm.
And it's just, it's unnerving how we don't know the future. And then we look back and we think, how did we ever get through that? For those who
Mhm.
missed our first conversation on Living a Legacy Life, episode 183, can you summarize briefly your first book, An Unexpected Gift, which I gave away to someone who needed that gift?
Yeah. Yeah. So, my first book is called The Gift of the Unexpected, Discovering Who You Are Meant to Be When Life Goes Off Plan.
Mm.
And that book came about because I am a former television journalist. I thought I was going to go back into TV news after taking 1 year off after having my daughter, and my husband had this 1 year residency. And so I thought once we moved, I would go right back into TV news. And then we got the
News.
news that we were moving to the middle of nowhere.
Huh?
So there was no TV station. And 8 days after we made that move, we found out that our unborn son had Down syndrome. And that's when,
Wow.
my life was just turned upside down. And so I was not going back to television news for more reasons than one. And gosh, that first book is really about the journey of deconstructing my beliefs, deconstructing who I was,
Mm.
and the rebuilding process that took place and can take place when the unexpected hits. And for me, that was having my son with Down syndrome.
Wow. So this book is called Overwhelmed and Grateful. Now, I was thinking, why did she choose overwhelmed and grateful? Why not overwhelmed and joyful, or overwhelmed and trusting God anyway, or overwhelmed and that's just the way it is in life? Why gratitude?
Mm. Because I think gratitude is essential to remembering that God's goodness is always at work.
Mhm.
Even in our darkest times, I'm not saying that we should feel gratitude all of the time, but even in those dark times, I could see beauty coming from those things. And I think gratitude, actively pursuing gratitude, let me put it that way, is a way to keep yourself attuned to the light that is always present within, um, in the world, in our lives.
I love what you write to us at the beginning. Because I do not want to become an old woman who lets the beauty of her life become the background.
Mhm.
I have a feeling you don't want to become an old woman who missed the good and lovely things of your one precious life either. What made you write those words?
Mm. So there's a little story to go with that. And it was really this kind of almost nothing conversation, honestly, that I had with my husband's family member. And it was this old woman who he is distantly related to. And she was talking about her sister who lives in Montana. And I know from other family members talking about where she lives, it's just the most stunning place.
Mm.
The mountains, the lakes, things like that. And this woman was talking about how just terrible it is living there.
Oh,
And I just kind of made the comment. I was like, do the mountains and lakes make up for it a bit? And she was like, "Oh no, it all just becomes the background." And that really was so
wait, repeat that
sad.
one more time.
Yeah, sure. She said, I asked her, do the mountains and lakes make up for it a bit? And she said, oh no, it all just becomes the background.
Wow.
And at the time, I thought that was so sad because at the time so I'm from Florida originally. And then as a military family, we had moved to three different mountainous desert areas. So different from what I grew up with, right? And to me, the mountains were alive to me. They really got me through hard times because they were this constant reminder of the grandness of God, God's beauty. And I just couldn't imagine them becoming the background.
Wow.
And so it was really sad to me at the time. And then I forgot all about it. And then I was years and years later, I was taking my youngest to preschool. And at that point, we were living in Colorado Springs. And where he went to preschool was kind of at the top of a hill that gave you the most gorgeous panoramic view of Colorado Springs with Pikes Peak right in the middle.
Oh,
And it just every time I made that drive, it was just that little like, that little feeling that you get inside of you. And this one day it didn't. And I just realized, huh, the beauty's become the background. What's off? What's off right now?
mm,
And yeah, so that's where that story originated from. And I think it's important that the truth is that the beauty of your life can become the background very quickly.
yes.
We now, like I said, we live on the Space Coast. We just moved to the water. We live on a river, and there are dolphins in our backyard.
Wow.
And it's as amazing as that is, and I know it's amazing. If I'm not careful,
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, another dolphin,
Yeah.
you know? And I know that might sound absurd
No.
but it's not. It doesn't matter what our view is and what our lives are. The beauty of our lives can become the background if we're not careful and intentionally practicing gratitude. And I think that the way that we do that the most authentic way is through this practice of honest gratitude, which incorporates the word and, which is why the ampersand is on the book, and which I'm sure we'll talk about more later.
Right. Well, I just think it's easy for all of us to take our beauty in the background or put it in the background because we take things for granted. And I
Mhm.
remember something my brother told me years ago. He said, familiarity breeds contempt. And I
Mm,
was pretty young when I heard that, but I understood what he was saying. And that
mhm.
we get so familiar, even with our family members, that we don't treat them with the honor that they deserve,
Yeah.
that God expects of us. I was in Chicago in the summer, which is not the best time to go to see my daughter. And when I had a wonderful time, but when I got off the airplane, and I live on the central coast of California, and breathed the air without any humidity, I
Hmm.
thought, I do live in paradise. I do live in paradise. The taxes are so high, but I do live in paradise because we take it for granted.
Yes.
And the beauty of God becomes so pushed back. I feel like when I'm so preoccupied with my worries about my daughter who lives in Chicago or my daughter in New York or my daughter in LA,
Hmm.
get so preoccupied or we get prideful and then we all of a sudden God is the background. If he's the background, we don't see the beauty that he's put right in front of us.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And I think that takes our intention
It does
to,
take attention.
yeah. Hmm.
What when our kids face disappointments and hardship, I think that can be harder than when I do because I've lived through it. I can look back and say, God brought me through this, but they don't have that history yet.
Hmm.
How can we help turn their hearts towards God and His goodness while at the same time allowing honest space for their grief and their anxiety?
Yeah. So I think that it is this practice and what that looks like is allowing ourselves, first of all, because I think it starts with us, right? So we can be honest about the things that are stressing us, that are paining us, that are worrying us. And then we look to the beauty in our lives, whatever that maybe it's connected to that thing that's stressing
But
us or
maybe
worrying
not.
us,
But maybe
but
not.
maybe it's not. Maybe
Right.
there's not a like lovely thing out of that horrible thing that you're facing, right? And so I think when it comes to our kids, it's the same thing. You know, it can be as simple as practicing the what was your low of the day and what was the high of your day. You know,
Right.
allowing them to talk about the harder parts of their day and also orienting them to also know that that bad part of your day does not define the entire day, just like the harsher parts of our reality do not define our entire lives, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just having those conversations of letting them breathe and be truthful without trying to bright side them
Right.
about their
Let's
experience.
look at the bright side. It can be so annoying.
Oh, it's so bad. It's especially when you're going through something really hard. You know,
Right.
like my two least favorite words when I was going through something really hard were at least. At least you have this. At least you have that. It's
And that
so
minimizes
diminishing.
yeah, I was gonna say it minimizes your pain.
Yes, exactly. And so I think for when it comes to our kids, we don't at least them, we don't bright side them, we give them those room that room to breathe. And we also just encourage them like, and tell me something good that happened. Tell me something good you're looking forward to. And we do that with ourselves.
Mm. Have they ever stopped you and said, "Mom, I'm not done yet"? Don't move me on to the to the
You know, it's
what
interesting. So I really only have one child who's kind
else?
of old enough to have
The
these
fun stuff going
conversations.
on.
And she's so dang positive. I mean, really, she takes way more after my husband.
Mhm. So annoying, isn't
I
it?
know, right? Like, I know. She's just a really naturally happy, positive person. I'm not quite there.
Yeah.
But I do sometimes for me, I have to get out of her. Okay, let's talk about this. Tell me what's bothering you. So,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. So you have to pull it out of her more.
Hmm.
It's interesting. Well, God made us all with different temperaments and personalities, but I wish I'd had this book when my kids were younger.
Mm,
We did, out of God's grace, we did bad news, good news every night at dinner.
I like
And
that.
and then so we did the other night with our adult growth group. I said roses and thorns because we hadn't seen each other all summer. And only one woman said, oh, it was all roses. But I told my husband his could be both the same thing because he rode his bicycle 410 miles across the state of Iowa with 96 degrees and headwinds. And I go, that was your rose and your thorn because you were with your daughter, which the rose was, but he'll never do it again. So,
Yeah.
it's kind of off the subject, but I think I love it that you have throughout the book, you use the ampersand, you use the and instead of but.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
rarely found an and. I was looking for them, but it was mainly this is what's hard, and this also is the goodness of God. And I think this is a sign of maturity as a believer that we can still trust Him in the dark night of the soul. That's what
Yeah.
Psalms are all about.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is why I framed the book in the way that I did. It's divided into three sections when our lives are in order, disorder, and reorder. And that's after Walter Brueggemann's, he's an Old Testament scholar. And it's after his book called The Spirituality of the Psalms, where he talks about those are how the Psalms are
Right,
categorized, because that's how our lives go. We're
right.
either in a phase of order, disorder, or reorder. And you know, like you talked about, you just mentioned the Psalms. The Psalms were so healing to me when I was in that phase of disorder
Mm.
because more than half of them are laments.
Right.
And I think that that's the mark of you just mentioned maturity, of a mature believer, is when we feel close enough to God that we really can bring it all to him, that we don't have to put the but in things that you just mentioned, you know, like um we don't have to downplay our first part of our truth and say, but you're so great. You know, we can really give God our whole truth. And that whole truth includes the fact that God is good and that there is still goodness in our lives somehow, some way.
Yeah, I was sharing my how I was feeling blue the other blue the other day about something with a gal who's 20. And she wrote right back, you just need to surrender. And I thought, well, yeah, I am feeling blue and I'm surrendering. And I have surrendered, but I didn't say anything back to her about that, except that you're right. We do need to surrender, lay our questions down is one of the things that you've said. I came across a bumper sticker years ago, and I was in the process of writing a talk on gratefulness, and the bumper sticker said grateful.com. And I thought, oh, some resource for me. So I went home and I looked up whatever it was, gratitude.com. But it only talked about being grateful. It had no source, which is really the world. I mean, everybody wants to be positive these days and they want to, it's kind of, I hate to call it like Satan, but it's like he's trying to copy what we should as believers. We need to be grateful in all things. But he tries to copy it so we feel better, but they're only saying thankful to the universe. It's like going up to the back of that school where your kid went and look at the view and saying, I thank you. Who are you thanking? You're thanking the mountains for being so beautiful. Is it possible to be truly grateful outside of being grateful to the source of our blessings? That's easy for us to answer because we were raised to be grateful to God, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and is that why non-believers have to add, I'm thanking the universe or Mother Earth, as if they know deep down there must be someone or something behind the grandeur of the world or whatever that they're thanking the world for?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I can't speak for a non-believer, but I do remember citing a source from a Harvard study in the book about how gratitude in part lies partially outside of the source of the thing. Like even when people are practicing gratitude, they are thankful for something, someone as the source of that good thing. And so, I don't know how to answer a question for a non-believer, but I do think that we're all aware of that the gifts that we've been given are not always of our own doing.
Of course.
We didn't create the mountains. We're not responsible for this beauty that we're experiencing.
And the converse is they're willing, or an unbeliever, I'm not saying anybody I know this way, but it seems like they can thank the universe or thank the unknown for something that's good, but as soon as something bad happens, they're condemning God. So
Mm,
we can get mixed up with that as well. You write this, before reading that article, I may have described this time in my life like this. This is the hardest my life has ever been, but I'm so grateful my sons are here and that their medical conditions are improving. We are conditioned, we've already mentioned this a little bit, but I want you to go into it a little bit more because I think it's so important. We're conditioned to frame things this way in the butt of things. We are conditioned to shine a light on the positive. Otherwise people, we might feel condemned that they say, oh, we're just negative. We're being negative.
mhm,
We're not
mhm.
really trusting God. How does the word and help us live more gratefully and truthfully?
So, but disconnects a statement that's already been made
Mm.
and connects a statement to another statement. And the purpose of this book is to say that two competing things can be true.
Oh, so
We
true.
we can be so sad about our circumstances, and we can also find something to be grateful for. Maybe it's inside those circumstances, or maybe it's outside. But I think it is crucial that I think as human beings, we need to not lose sight of the darkness. Let
Right.
me say that, okay? Not just in our own lives, but as a collective. We can't just pretend like dark things don't exist. Because if we do, we're going to lose our humanity. We're going to lose our empathy. And we also cannot lose sight of the light. Because if we do that, then we lose it all. We're going to lose everything. And so this practice of and is to be connected to our own darkness, or a collective darkness, um, and to keep our eyes open to the light that is somehow still present because it is.
Mhm. Mhm. And I think because you've experienced it, you have the authority to speak on it. And someone might be right in the middle of the darkness right now and need to change their butt into
Mhm.
an and. I don't
Mhm.
know, that just gives me more peace to realize it's okay to be honest. Lord
Yes.
knows anyway, and that's why. I love the Psalms as well. You talk about the spiritual practice of looking for God's beauty. That sounds nice, but to say that um, to someone who is in the pit of
Mhm,
pain or longing or disappointment or fear can be tricky. I find that to be true because my children are adults
mhm,
and they know how they were raised and how I think.
mhm.
So I don't want them turning it back on me, oh, mom, because I don't want to just say, you need to trust the Lord, because they do need to trust the Lord. But I don't want to say that because to me, that might, they may not be in the place to hear that right then.
Yeah.
How do you go about encouraging others to see God's goodness in the meantime? Do you have any tips?
I think the number one thing that you can, the dedication of this book is to my mom. And it's because, let me read it real quick because I don't want to mess it up. Um,
It was beautifully said.
it says, for my mom, Joanne, who has held me through the storms and by her presence helped me point my face toward the sun.
Mm,
And that's because I phrase it that way because my mom did not try to make the situation better by pointing out the good things that still exist to me. It was by being the light that I could see the light. It was by her relentless solidarity that I was able to point my face toward the sun again.
mm,
And so I would say if you have somebody who you are close with, to just keep showing up, to sit in the pit with them. And if they ask for a specific way to shine a light, like they want your encouragement, then give
and
it.
yeah.
But if they don't, then just say, I am here with you. I'm not leaving. My heart hurts with yours. My heart will hurt with yours as long as your heart is hurting. And I'm here for you wherever this takes us. And I think that is the best way to support someone who's hurting.
I remember when I was single, another single friend was visiting overnight, and her boyfriend had just dumped her, someone she thought she was going to marry. And I was busy making pancakes or something, breakfast. And she comes out of the room with her quilt wrapped around her body and kind of shuffles out there. And she just slides down the kitchen cupboards and sits on the kitchen floor. And I remember I thought, I got to turn off these eggs because they're going to burn. And
Hmm.
there's nothing I can do to bring what's his name back. I'm glad you
Hmm.
got another good what's his name. But anyway, in the time we didn't know, we don't know what the future holds.
Hmm.
So I just slid down next to her and I was with her. And that's what reminds me of what your mom and I'm sure
Hmm.
many others did for you and that you will continue to do for others because our sitting with them in their pain is the way to show God's light because he says he will never leave us nor forsake us. And that's usually through someone else
Yeah.
with us, right?
Yes,
Thank you
absolutely.
for sharing that. I heard Sidlow Baxter say years ago, the Psalms are in the heart of the Bible for the heart of man. And I love your line, thank God the Psalms teach us our humanity is allowed. You just mentioned that. The Psalms remind us that God is with us in the struggle and in the rebuilding.
Hmm.
Why did you choose to end each of your chapters with a psalm? I love it. It's almost like a Bible study.
Yeah. I decided to do that because I want people to understand that their humanity is allowed. I
Mm,
want them to, I think that there's such, I don't know why. I think that our culture can be toxically positive
amen.
when it comes to self-help culture and hustle culture and all these things, right? I
Right.
also think that this is rampant in Christian culture, and I don't know why. And so, me including the Psalms in there is really a way to combat that. To maybe who people who were raised in a church that was like, oh, just trust in God, and just where their problems were diminished. Like, no, no, like here is how to be in relationship with God. God says this is okay. God says this is what God wants out of us. This is how we love God and how we talk to God. It's right here.
Mhm.
And it's by bringing it all to God.
Right. Brandon Manning wrote that gratitude is the biggest expression of trust. And when I read that, I thought, wow,
Hmm.
because my word of the year is trust. I thought, oh, I just need to be more grateful. And then I'll show God that I'm trusting him. But the over encompassing thought of that is that I'm grateful because I can trust him even when I see things are not happening the way I want them to happen.
Yeah.
And Anne Lamott, as you quoted, said that gratitude is peace. How would you end that phrase? Gratitude is healing?
I probably would add it as healing. And when it comes to the trust part that you just mentioned, I like that gratitude is trust. And I resonate with that because I think gratitude is trusting that God's goodness is somehow at work even when we cannot see. And how I trust God is not that my circumstances are always going to work out in a way that I want them to, but that God brings new life out of our dead things. I think that we experience many little deaths while we're here on earth, and God is somehow going to take that and make something new come out of it. And so, gratitude for me, especially in those really dark periods, is knowing like new life is going to come out of this. God is working in ways I can't see,
Yep.
and new life will come again.
Well, he talks about that beauty from ashes.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
we all have, sometimes we have little ashes and sometimes we have a full-on bonfire. The week that we're recording this is right after Charlie Kirk was assassinated, and so it'll be several months before this comes out. But as I was reading your book, I thought someone needs to send your book to Erica Kirk.
Mm,
And she won't be ready to read it today,
sure.
but in
Yeah.
6 months, it will be of great comfort to her. I mean, she knows the principles. We know the principles of
Mhm.
trusting God, that He is big enough, but we actually come to know God when we experience life and when we're honest with our humanity.
That's a really good point because sometimes, practicing gratitude in when you're in those dark periods, I would never tell somebody, well, you need to be practicing gratitude.
Yeah.
That's not it.
No.
But if you can go all the way through those dark periods and believe and trust that God is at work. And also dig deeper, go use it as an opportunity to go deeper in your faith than you have before. For me, in those dark periods, I don't think I was sitting down writing what I was grateful for. I'll be totally honest. However, what I was doing was I was reading really thick theological books. I was taking seminary courses and it made me want to pursue God even more, to understand God's character in a time where I didn't understand anything. Everything just felt so out of sort. And so that for me was I could see that beauty playing out while I was in the pit because I realized this was the most alive my faith had ever been to me.
Mhm. Yeah, and I've been praying since I was in college, Lord, help me know you better. And then he goes, okay, life happens. You want
Yes.
to know me better, and this is how you do. You dig deep. But so many people turn away during those
Hmm.
times because they feel like they've been betrayed by a God they said they trusted, but they didn't actually know God. One of my favorite parts of the story of the Exodus is it's a little verse, part of a verse where it says, and God took them the long way around. I thought,
I've written about that before.
yeah, we've been taken the long way around often.
Hmm.
And when you're 35 and not married and not dating, you're being taken the long way around if your greatest desire is to be a wife, or
Hmm.
if you're infertile and your greatest
Hmm.
desire is to be a mother. God is taking you the long way around, or you're wishing that your marriage was better, or whatever it is, or that you have a hard diagnosis. You encourage the reader to cultivate practicing awe. How does that concept intercept with cultivating gratitude?
So awe is I would say a difficult thing to cultivate, and I would only say that I feel like I learned how to cultivate awe from living out west, from living in a place that I was not familiar with, and just being in awe came more easily to me then. What I will say about it now is I think that there are ways to cultivate awe, but I think the biggest way to cultivate awe is to practice being easily delighted.
Oh, that was one of my favorite lines.
Yes, and it's like just being easily delighted by, the smell of your coffee brewing to really listen to the wind rustle through the trees
Yep.
and the peace that that brings, to see the light sparkling off the water. And eventually that's the practice of noticing. And
Mm,
gratitude is about
yes,
noticing.
yes.
And sometimes awe comes to us by way of mystery. That's the very nature of awe, is that it is mysterious.
Mm,
And I think when we practice noticing, that easily delighted feeling crosses over into awe.
mm,
And awe is, I think, a way we experience God. It's an encounter with the divine that is mysterious. That's hard to put into words because it is mysterious. But man, I think that's one of the best feelings that we can
mm,
experience in this life is awe.
mm. Um, my brother Hyatt is a world-renowned artist, and he notices beauty in the most commonplace as well as the most magnificent. And I think it pleases God
Hmm.
because he created both. And,
Hmm.
wow, someone, it's only Hyatt, but at least he's noticing that I
Hmm.
did this in this tide pool today, or whatever it is, or a piece of driftwood. One vacation when the kids were little was stressful because the kids were little and we hadn't made
Yeah.
reservations. We're in the mountains by Lake Tahoe. But every day we would look for ways that God surprised us. And
Hmm.
I think that's the way, especially when you have small kids, to even like seeing a raccoon nowadays, that would not be a God surprise. But on a trip with kids, that was a surprise. Look how God
Yeah.
surprised us then every day, or getting bunk beds in this hotel. It was the last room. For me, the surprise was we got a room. For them, it
Mhm.
was we got bunk beds in the room because we don't have bunk beds at
Mm,
home. I think a little is lost when we lose our childlike wonder. And I think that is something we can pray for.
yeah.
Um, I think it was funny when, to me, it was funny, not what you said, but I was thinking it's so vital to be honest
Mhm.
and which I have to be. I have to be honest with myself, and when I'm not, God convicts me. But um, without being a Pollyanna or a negative Nancy. And what was funny to me
Yeah.
is why are those both women's names? You don't want to be a Pollyanna. I went to Europe for 10 weeks with a backpack with two women, and one woman I didn't know at all. And she was a negative Nancy. And later,
Mm,
my girlfriend said, "You were such a Pollyanna." And I said, "I was just trying to survive the negative Nancy." So we can
yeah.
go one way or the other, but the whole
Yes.
point is to be honest.
Yes. I think that neither of those existences are quite accurate. There's always challenges, no matter what phase of life we're in, whether it's a phase of order, disorder, or reorder. Right now, I'm in a phase of order. And my biggest challenge is the amount of time I spend in the car. My son is doing, with Down syndrome, he is doing a therapy that is an hour and a half away.
Oh no, that's
Yes,
so
and
far.
I know. And so, and I was already in the car so much with my daughter and her theater schedule. And, I've got three kids and they're just at that activity phase. And so, like, is that a huge challenge? No. And
But
yet it is still challenging. It's daunting. It makes you tired, right? And so my point in saying that is there's always going to be something. There's always something, right? And there's always going to be beauty. I'll tell you a little tiny story. This morning, I was taking my boys to school and we passed like the river on a really gorgeous road on the way to school. And I was in a very negative space this morning because, like you said, the news cycle and it's really gotten me down over the last week. And um, then my son said, "Look, a roseate spoonbill." And it's a unique pink bird that
oh,
lives here, but we don't see them very often.
uh-huh.
And it just pulled me out of the cloud, and it was like, okay,
Thank you,
things
Lord.
are really bad right now, and God's goodness is still here. Like we're still our regular lives are still happening, and our regular lives are also very good.
Yeah, yeah, I just love that because we tend to think that it has to be one way or the other,
Yes.
but that's what the big and was. So thank you
Hmm.
for writing it.
Hmm.
What do you think is the main lesson we learn from the book of Ecclesiastes?
Oh gosh, that was a hard chapter that I wrote. Did you read the chapter?
I read the whole chapter. It's my brother's favorite. He's written a book on it. So it's his favorite book of the Bible. And I think it is Hyatt. Why? I love, well, because he loves his wife, laying down with his wife, and it talks about that.
Yeah.
And he's 82.
Gosh.
He's found a lot of life anyway. But can you remember what?
Yeah.
If you don't
I
remember, I can tell you what I learned from it. It's
I think I'm happy to hear what you think
okay.
too. I think off the cuff, the biggest lesson from Ecclesiastes is that really bad things are going to happen here, and sometimes it's going to feel pointless. And also, really good things are going to happen here. And we might not have all the answers, but we keep moving forward and we keep trusting God as we move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. And can I ask how old you are? Do you mind?
38.
So young, and see the wisdom. The Lord has inserted you with a bunch of wisdom in a short period of time because of what you've suffered.
Yes.
It's
I
nothing.
well, I hope that's true, but yes, there
It
was
is,
a
it is true. I can tell from the book. Um, yeah, is exactly. I wrote this down in my notes when I was reading to lay our questions down. It doesn't mean we don't ask them.
hmm
We lay them down because God is a sovereign and his
Yeah.
goodness continues. And
hmm
then to move forward anyway. So you just said what I said, so I guess I passed my test. Um, in your chapter on confusion, which I loved, you
hmm
wrote, "We believed God healed parts of Preston." That's your second
hmm
or your third child,
Third child.
but not all. And I was thinking about that too, because you went through such serious fears of what could have
hmm
happened. And yet there were miraculous healings,
hmm
mysterious ones, unexplained, even to the
Yeah.
doctors.
hmm
And so anyway, I'll keep saying what you wrote. We believe God healed parts of Preston, but not all. We did not understand why. I think that we can, this is me talking now, we can begin to lose faith in God and lose heart in our prayers when when we see what seems to be arbitrary answers. Some turn their backs on God as a result. I mean, this is a long time ago, but one kid I talked to, I knew him in youth group, but I talked to him later as adult. I said, "Why did you leave the faith?" Because he had in high school. He goes, "Because I didn't make the baseball team." You
Oh.
know, God didn't answer his prayers.
hmm
And I think as adults, we think, "Oh, that's silly," but we do the same thing. Lord, I
hmm
asked for you to do this healing, to bring this situation. And since you didn't heal it altogether, I
hmm
guess I'll just move away from God.
Yeah, that was a hard one for me. I actually remember struggling with a friend of mine whose daughter also got a diagnosis, and it would have been a devastating diagnosis. And when she was born, she still had a heart diagnosis, but it wasn't what they said she had.
Yeah.
That would have been devastating. And I remember her saying that she believed it was a miracle. And I was, I'm a skeptic. I am a skeptic. And I'm like, well, how does that work? And then the same thing happened to us.
Right. Oh, so that happened before yours.
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. And the
that's
same
a
thing.
mercy. You know, that's a mercy from God that you heard that from her first.
Yeah. Yeah. You're probably right. It is. And I still don't have the answers for that. All
Oh,
I know is that doctor after doctor after doctor said it was this thing. And there was evidence of that thing. Like it's a very specific diagnosis. And so he had this keyhole shaped bladder, which is like that happens when it's posterior urethral valves. And yet when they went to go ablate the valves, there were none.
mm,
And so yeah, I don't know how God works. I don't know. I do not know why there were no valves, but I don't know why there were also a lot of health complications. I mean, that
yeah,
was a very rough first 2 years of life for him, and for all of us.
yeah.
All I know is that I believe that God chose to work in some ways and not others, and there's no amount of questioning that I'm going to get that answer. That's just what I choose to believe happened, and move forward with that.
Well, see, I think that explains what we were saying earlier, that we lay our questions down. It doesn't mean we don't ask them,
Yeah,
but you lay them down in really in worship. It's a part of worship
yeah,
and
yeah,
gratitude to lay them down and say, "I still don't get this, but I'm not going to shake my fist at you."
yeah. And I talked in the first book. I remember in my first podcast in the press kit, one of the questions was, why is it that I submitted to podcasters is why is it good to ask God why? Why is that a good thing? And the truth is I do think asking God why is a good thing because I think that, like I said, it can dive you deeper into study.
Yes.
It can get you to get more acquainted with God and, like I said, deconstruct long held beliefs that you had and construct new ones. However, there is a time where you have to move forward from those questions. You're only going to get the answers that you're going to get, and you're never going to get the full picture. And so I think it is important to ask those why questions. I just think it's also important to eventually lay them down.
Yeah, they say that many of the Psalms that are full of despair and questions end with, but I hope thou in God, but not every single one. Not every
Hmm.
single Psalm does that. And I think
Hmm.
that's good for us too.
Yeah. Sometimes it's okay to just end in a lament because
And
God can handle that too.
yeah. Um, let's see, my last question is you write about invitation. Maybe you didn't know that, but you did. And I always pick up on that word since that's my theme. That's what Welcome Heart is all about. You said God often invites us into a more complete wholeness by way of a splintered path. Honey bun, that's poetry. I just want you to know.
You're the second podcaster to quote that back to me today.
Okay, it's beautifully said.
Thank
How
you.
because we can all think of a splinter or walking on rocks when we're barefoot.
Mhm. Mhm.
How can we still be grateful when the path remains splintered?
I think that, do you mean while you're okay. I see. I think I know what you mean. Like for me, I'm still on a splintered path because I'm walking this road with my son with Down syndrome and that sort of thing. Okay. Um, hmm.
Well, just
I
wait till
think
Violet becomes a teenager, and then that'll be another splintered path.
Yeah, sure, sure. I'm going to use my son with Down syndrome because he is my greatest teacher. And please don't misunderstand me, listeners. It's not about like he was not sent here to teach me.
No?
However, he is my greatest teacher. And he is also a splintered path because raising a kid in with a disability, a significant disability, in a world that is not acceptable or not accepting, sorry, of him or accessible to him in many ways.
Mm,
Um, there are always challenges with him, and there are always extra challenges. It's more than the challenges that come with raising my other kids,
right.
right? And it is in that vulnerability, it is in that ache that exists with raising him that I do find an invitation from God to lean into trust, to lean into the goodness that God provides, and to um, realize that, there's always going to be suffering. My life always has this little element of suffering in it because of him. And it also has these extra elements of joy because of him, a unique joy that I would not have otherwise.
So
And I
true.
think God so often works in that way.
Mhm. I know that because I have friends with kids with Down syndrome,
Hmm.
and they would say the same.
Yeah.
Um, I'll close with this. I no longer trust that God will rescue me from my humanity. Instead, I trust in a God who will love me through it.
Hmm.
That's so beautifully said. And also, the need for certainty ceased, and we are content to stand in the mystery of God's goodness. Why is God's goodness a mystery?
Mm. Oh gosh, why is God's good? I don't know if I could answer why it's a mystery.
I don't know. I'm supposed to ask why questions. You just told
I just don't know if I have the answer
me.
for it.
That's all right.
Um, but I think God's goodness is a mystery because I'll give you an example that I quote in I think my latest chapter, and it's where my last chapter, my husband asks me if I could take it all back, would I?
Oh, yeah, that's good.
And the answer was truly, if I could take the pain that my children suffered, oh,
Right.
I would, absolutely. But if there was a way to have gone through something similar, that only affected me and not them, I wouldn't. That's the mystery of the goodness of God right there.
Mm,
It's that one of the major paths of transformation is by the way of suffering. And if we're open to it, it's not that if you suffer, you're going to be transformed. It doesn't work that way. But if you look at the suffering and call it what it is, call it for the tragedy that it might be, that's okay. And you can also look at it as an invitation to know God deeper, to know yourself deeper, and to go through a shedding process and a rebirth process that comes from that.
Mm.
That to me is the mystery of God that I could look back on that and say, no, I wouldn't take that away. Because I wouldn't be who I am. I would not know God the way that I do. Um, that's the mystery of the goodness of God.
Well, I hope listeners that you are drawn to read this book. It's a beautiful book, and now you've heard the heart behind the book. How can we find you and your book, Jillian?
Yep. I'm at jillianbenfield.com, and there you will find 3 free ebooks from me,
Oh, wow.
and those will sign you up for my newsletter. And I'm on Instagram at Jillian Benfield blog and Facebook at Jillian Benfield.
Okay. And again, the name of your book?
Overwhelmed and grateful. The key to finding God's goodness in all life's ups and downs. I had to look at the subtitle because they changed it slightly and I get it wrong every time.
That's
But
quite
it's
all right.
accurate. It's
And it's
accurate.
and it's a long one, so you want to make sure it's right.
Yes.
And bless your heart, Jillian will be giving away a copy of the book. So this week, if you would comment on social media or just send me an email at sue@welcomeheart.com, you will be entered to win it. But you'll probably want to get 2 copies, one for a friend. This is a book I think you can give to someone who is suffering without feeling like you're just trying to put a band-aid over their wound.
Yes. I agree with that because it allows the suffering to breathe and
Right.
it allows the light to pour into.
Yeah, a lot of quotable quotes in this. So thanks again, Jillian. We appreciate you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Do you feel like you are on a splintered path? I just love that metaphor. Um, I love the fact that you can say, and I'm suffering and God is still good. I have a longing for this and I'm waiting on a good God. So send me your, I would love to hear if you're on an and splintered path and then an and you're seeing the beauty and the goodness of God. I'd love to hear your sentence with the ampersand or with the and instead of the but. I hope you've been encouraged today to go into the Psalms, to buy this book, to read her story, and to be in wonder and awe of our beautiful God. Thank you so much. You have a great day.